Welcome to Prepper Nation. I am John. Thank you very much for checking this out, whether you're watching or listening, whether you're new, whether you're usual suspect. I appreciate the subscribing. This is the rundown, which is why it's hitting in the afternoon, right? So what we do every so often here at Prepper Nation is we run down the popular comments on the previous handful of videos because I do see every single comment. And again, the popular comments that people have maybe responded to are the ones that really stand out when I'm going through the comments. So we're going to jump back 3 days to shtf madness in America. And again, these are available back in the video section. If you haven't seen the video and you want to go back and watch it or whatever, y'all get the idea. Dusty Bob, how has Ukraine spent the money that America has already given it? I want accountability. I do too, Dusty Bob. I had to go in, dig around. The United States has actually sent Ukraine 113 billion with a B dollars since Russia invaded Ukraine. So you're not going to get the accountability. We want accountability. We're not going to get it. Our politicians are never going to give that to us. So I say this in pure speculation. I think at least half, if not more than half of the money just went elsewhere, went into somebody's pocket or campaign funds or something like that. Now, I do know some of it went to pay the retirement and the pensions of Ukrainian officials, Ukrainian politicians, to support Ukraine's own version of their welfare programs and stuff like this, which sucks. I'm not gonna lie to you, it sucks. And of course, a lot of it has went to their military. But I mean, we're $115 billion in. Zelensky wants, I think it's 60 or $61 billion more at this point. He's visiting DC, he's talking to Joe Biden, he's talking to Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, trying to convince America to give him more money. But at some point, it's either you stand on your own 2 feet and you're willing to fight and you earn your independence, or you just let it happen, because I'm sick of funding the war, I'll be honest with you. Long Dog T, my hairstylist finally sees what's going on. Amazed that it took so long. Me too. And what's curious here, I wonder what it was. Long Dog T, if you check this out, please leave a comment if they mentioned it. I'm curious what the deciding factor was. What finally happened to make your hairstylist, God love her, finally open her eyes and say something's not right here? Because undoubtedly she lived through the pandemic, the scamdemic. She lived through all of the whiskey shot propaganda. She's seen the economy, I'm sure. Most people have anyway. I wonder what flipped the switch for, but it gives me hope. I'm not necessarily going to spend time trying to wake people up anymore. I haven't been for a while, but it does give me hope that a few people are at least waking up to the insanity that we deal with here in the United States of America. Granny Joan, America is on a ventilator for sure. We could use 4 more years to keep prepping. So in this video, I had mentioned that America, our way of life essentially is on a ventilator, and things are going to inevitably change. At some point, the plug's going to be pulled, or I forget how I worded it exactly, but she's agreeing with that comment. And to this morning's topic, she's actually saying we could use 4 more years. I think she's making a reference maybe to Trump winning or the GOP maybe winning the White House and giving us 4 more years. Trump is not the fix all. He's not going to be able to fix the entire country and reset the course, folks. He's not the savior, but he will give us 4 more years to kind of brace for impact, to batten down the hatches. So excellent comment. Carolyn C.A., you need to vote anyway, John. I was talking about in that video, I was talking about how if certain people that I predicted, Liz Cheney, the main one, if I predicted Liz Cheney back when she was a Republican rhino, I said, she's going to be at the top of the Democratic ticket. They're going to set her up on the left for a presidential run. And I said at that point, if Liz Cheney's at the top of the Democratic ticket, I'm done voting. If a dude down here in the South, I don't even have a political science degree, right? If I'm able to see that and predict that, then it's all staged. And I said at this point, I'm done. You know, I've made the comment before, Carolyn, that go ahead and vote. It takes about as much time as microwaving a burrito. But if the fix is in to the point where I can call it months and almost a year in advance, I would rather just microwave a burrito. I'm gonna be honest with you, man, because that point, for me, it doesn't matter. Um, Totally different than your local elections, though. I will say that those do matter. Patriot Girl Prepper. Citizenship for service is not new. 20 years ago, a handful of my platoon, uh, this happened with them. They were incorporated into the U.S. military. They were proud to be Americans. So, first of all, thank you for your service. That was 20 years ago. I respect the comment, and I'm sure they were proud to be Americans back then. Nowadays, 20 years later, Americans aren't even proud to be an American. A lot of our youth and stuff like this, and definitely, sorry, somebody's texting here, and definitely a lot of illegals. They're not even proud of the country they're escaping from. So a handful, that's the key term, I think, with your comment. A handful incorporated at a time, being absorbed into the US military, kind of learning the ropes and the way of life and having a sense of patriotism for this country. That's okay. I don't have an issue with that. I'm talking about people running from their own countries. I'm talking about the potential of Chinese nationalists getting absorbed into the United States military. I'm not a huge fan of that. I've got to be honest about that. So skipping over while we're on the topic, right? A couple of days ago, we had a video here at Prepper Nation called "Illegals as Soldiers and Law Enforcement." There were tons of comments on this one, by the way. And a few people are like, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That'll never happen." It's being pushed in certain states, believe it or not, for the law enforcement thing. Illinois is one of them. Andy Purdy. I don't think people who break the law should have authority over me. I don't either. This is the problem I have with many of those folks in the swamp. They're lawbreakers. They're criminals. I don't think the UN should have authority over me. And all of the globalist elites, they should have no authority over me. And constitutionally speaking, they really don't. Um, and again, I know to a lot of people out there, it seems like fantasy to have illegals playing the role of law enforcement here in the United States. I mean, it's so stupid, it's unbelievable. But again, there are certain states and there are certain cities that are looking at that as a possibility because they have nowhere else to pull law enforcement from. That's how bad the recruiting is. And again, with the military, they would have authority over you during a time of martial law or something like that. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. Camo guy. Illegals as soldiers would solve the age-old question. Would U.S. troops fire on U.S. citizens? I'm going to go ahead and answer that for you now because I don't want you to have this age-old question and be carrying around the burden of that. They will. A large majority of them will do what they're told. Now, there are good people out there who are going to refuse that directive, but in my heart, I believe a lot of them. Alex Jones did a perfect documentary on this. Um, I can't mention it here. It's actually a movie, but it's somewhat of a documentary. Maybe somebody can drop it in chat, the name of it, if they've seen it. But I do think a lot of people are going to do what they're told because this is what soldiers do. Excellent comment. Russell Wiley. Illegals would gladly go door to door for gun confiscation, right? So they would gladly, a lot of people, not just illegals, but a lot of Americans too, have this mentality as long as it's not me. as long as it's not me being thieved from or being loaded onto a train car. As long as it's not me and my family, I'll execute the order. So good comment. Frank Moses, give illegals access to our best arms. What could possibly go wrong? That's what I'm saying, right? Give them legal authority, although I would dispute the legality of it big time. Give them our best weaponry and equipment and cut them loose. What could possibly go wrong? Minuteman, those who point to the Statue of Liberty need to remember it was a gift for kicking some rear end. Of course, he was a little more colorful about it, but there's a lesson to be learned there. Okay. A lot of your liberals will do that. They'll point to the Statue of Liberty and they'll point to the message on the front. As we chatted about last week, the population wasn't where it's at right now. So half of the country was wide open. Yes, please bring on immigrants to help us build this thing. But what Minuteman is saying is if you're going to point to the Statue of Liberty, you also need to understand why the Statue of Liberty was delivered here to the United States. And that's because we refused tyranny and we stood up to tyrants. So maybe there are multiple lessons to be learned by pointing to the Statue of Liberty. And finally, Loose Chipper, love the name. Who you think they want to use to disarm American citizens? Could be illegals. I get what you're saying. Could be illegals, could be our own military. I still think if I was a bet man, I would hedge my bet on the UN. I really do think at some point they're going to be called in for the sake of peacekeeping, and they're going to begin to try to confiscate Americans' arms. So anyway, yesterday's video, America's economic collapse is coming. All right, so Hamtom says, I'm 5 years away from retirement, but what scares me is the cost of living. It's out of control. Thank you for recognizing that. Most Americans do, some still do not. Some still think that the economy is booming. You know, to me, it's either they've been gaslit by the Biden administration or they're just so loaded down with money that they don't see the constant pain at the pump. They don't see the constant food inflation. I mean, I don't understand other than willful ignorance. So it's good that you recognize that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would be scared of it, but it would be concerning. If I knew I had 5 years until retirement, I knew I was going to make X amount of money, at the point of retirement, and then things have went up so much over the last 15 or 20 years maybe that amount that you're going to be getting is not what it used to be. The US dollar is slowly dying. So user 8D, more people need to consider trade schools. Exclamation mark. I agree. And I've said if I had to do it over again, that's the route I would have taken as a young man with hair on his head. However, to yesterday's point, not a lot of young people are interested anymore. You know, I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush, and we're not talking about every single 20-year-old, okay? But many of your 20-year-olds, they really want a nanny state here in the United States of America. The least amount of responsibility possible. Again, to yesterday's point, as long as the internet's working, they have hot pockets to eat, they've got electricity, and they've got heat and water and a place to lay their head down. They really don't care about anything else in terms of ambition. So, while I understand your comment and I agree with it, I think trade schools are awesome. As a 20-year-old, someone is sitting there saying, "Well, I can go to a trade school and work 9 to 5 for the rest of my life and have a decent living and lifestyle, or I can lay around and do nothing. And the government will take care of me to the point where I have practically the same lifestyle." And so, again, there's not a lot of drive. Excuse me. There's not a lot of ambition in our young people. And it's because our government enables that. Prepper Nut. I see young people around me waste a lot of time and money on their phones. Agree and disagree. I see it too. But I got to be honest with you, Prepper Nut. I see a lot of people our age doing the same thing. I see a lot of people our age going nonstop. I see it all the time everywhere I go. It's not just young people. It's Americans, I think, in general, are so tied to technology now. They basically are living in it and they're wasting their lives. Let me see here. Bright Star. This is a great, great comment. This puts things into perspective from yesterday because I knew that there were some comments that came in and I knew, we have repayment plans. There's no excuse not to repay student loans. Student loans shouldn't be killing people. Bright Star. I attended community college from 1975 to 1977, and it cost me $300 a year. Now that same community college costs $5,600 a year. Still affordable. $5,600 is still affordable, and community college is another viable path, I think. But that just goes to show you, look at that jump from 77 until now. $300 a year, $5,600 a year. Wages have not went up that significantly. And so it's a problem. It's a problem not necessarily for a community college, but if you go to a 4-year university or something like that, man, you're in debt for the rest of your life in most cases. Florida trucker. I see homeless everywhere. Seems to be a large increase in Florida. It's not just Florida. Um, I can't speak for all 50 states, but I'm telling you here in this area, um, especially around Charlotte and Concord, massive, massive increase in homelessness. And we're beginning to see the same trends, on a smaller scale, but in smaller towns. We're beginning to see it all over the place to the point where if your town has shelters, they're already overwhelmed. If you have food banks and a lot of churches and things do food banks for the homeless and stuff, they're overwhelmed. They don't have enough financing, they don't have enough in terms of donations, they don't have enough room space. It's getting crazy. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. Drug use goes into that, alcoholism goes into that, you know, but what we're seeing now, I think, is not just drug use and abuse and stuff like this. It's also people that, as we were talking about yesterday, were middle class and lost a job or something. When you've got two breadwinners at home, all of your bills hinge on you and your wife or you and your husband's ability to pay the bills because you're both working and somebody loses a job, which is happening a lot in this economy. You may lose your home at that point. You may become homeless just because of that. It's crazy. Finally, Bob Sal. We have 4 months, according to most CPAs and financial experts. Keep stacking. I'm definitely not a financial expert. I don't pretend to be, but that sounds pretty accurate to me. I think the writing is on the wall. It would not shock me if we see an economic collapse during 2024. Now, again, you can point to it. You can say it was self-inflicted. It's being done because of the election, caused total chaos, or you can say, it was just a matter of time. However, we got there, that's up for debate. But I don't think us having an economic collapse at some point is even up for debate. Anybody can see the writing on the wall if they open their eyes. I appreciate everybody checking out the rundown. Y'all take care. God bless.